Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Paranoid Stories. Today I am back with 10 true long-haul trucker horror stories. In this episode, we will venture deep into the vast, lonely stretches of highway, the dimly lit rest stops and the cramped cabins of big rigs, places where the miles melt away and reality often follows. These chilling accounts come directly from professional drivers, dispatchers, and those who spend their lives on the road, encountering things in the dark that the average person never sees. Each story is a genuine nightmare pulled from the testimonies of real people who found themselves trapped in the iron and glass cage of their truck, thousands of miles from the familiar. These aren't fictional campfire legends. They're verified, documented experiences from individuals who lived through absolute horror while relying on their vehicle as their only sanctuary. To protect the privacy of those involved and their employment, names and specific locations have been carefully altered while preserving the authenticity of each encounter. If you're new to Paranoid Stories, consider subscribing for nightly true horror content that will keep you looking over your shoulder. Tap the notification bell so you never miss an episode. If you or someone you know has had a chilling trucker experience, share it in the comments below. Your story may help others understand the real risks that truckers face every day. The road twisted like a vein through the spine of the Appalachians, carving its way deeper into West Virginia's forested heart. I gripped the wheel of the old rental, a '98 Chevy Cavalier that smelled faintly of mildew and cigarette ash, the kind of car you get when the budget's tight and the agency's lot is picked over. My name's Elias, and I'd taken this detour on a whim, chasing some half-baked notion of clearing my head after a messy divorce. The city lights of Pittsburgh were a distant memory now, replaced by the dense canopy overhead that turned late afternoon into perpetual twilight. The engine hummed unevenly, protesting the steep grades, and I fiddled with the radio, catching only static laced with country twang from some far-off station. That's when I noticed the glove compartment wouldn't quite latch. It had been sticking since I picked up the car, but now as I fumbled with it one-handed, something shifted inside. Not the owner's manual or the crumpled map, something heavier. I pulled over at a wide spot in the shoulder, the gravel crunching under the tires, and popped it open. Tucked behind a faded receipt was a small leather-bound journal, its cover worn soft as an old Bible, edges frayed from years of handling. No name on it, just faint creases where fingers had gripped it too many times. Curiosity got the better of me. I flipped it open. The handwriting was tight, deliberate, like someone pressing down hard to make the words stick. The first pages were dated a few years back, entries from a man, had to be from the voice, on a road trip much like mine. He called himself Jack, no last name, and he'd rented the same make and model from the same no-frills outfit in Charleston. I glanced around, the woods pressing in silent and watchful before settling back in the seat. The air in the car felt thicker now. I started reading, the words pulling me in like a current. Jack had begun his journey feeling the same restless pull I did, escaping some vague dissatisfaction with life back east. The mountains were a tonic at first, he wrote, the isolation sharpening his senses, making every rustle in the underbrush feel alive. But by the second day, as he climbed higher into the hollows, doubt crept in. He described hearing whispers in the wind through the pines, not words exactly, but suggestions, faint urgings that the road was watching him, that the curves weren't random but deliberate, leading him somewhere he wasn't meant to go. I shifted in my seat, the leather creaking under me, and kept reading. Jack's tone shifted gradually, from wonder to wariness. He swore the shadows along the roadside moved when he wasn't looking, elongating at dusk like fingers reaching out. One night, parked at an overlook similar to this one, He claimed to see lights flickering in the trees. Not fireflies, but something colder, like eyes reflecting a hidden moon. He tried to laugh it off, attributing it to fatigue and too much black coffee. But the next morning, he found scratches on the car's paint, thin lines that hadn't been there before. My own drive had been uneventful so far, but as I turned the pages, a chill settled in my bones. The journal's ink seemed to darken, the script growing erratic. Jack wrote of paranoia taking root, how every passing trucker eyed him too long in the rear view, their faces blurring into sameness under those wide-brimmed hats. He started avoiding the main highways, sticking to these back routes where the pavement narrowed and the guardrails rusted through. The isolation amplified everything. The way the engine's rumble echoed off the cliffs, sounding almost like a voice murmuring back. I paused, my eyes flicking to the windshield. The sun was dipping lower, painting the treetops in bloody hues, and for a moment I thought I heard it too, a low murmur in the wind, or maybe just the tires on asphalt. Shaking it off, I drove on, the journal open on the passenger seat. Jack's entries delved deeper into delusion. He became convinced the mountains held secrets, old ones buried in the coal seams and forgotten mines. He imagined the rocks themselves whispering histories of men lost to the dark, their voices carried on the fog that rolled in at night. By what he called his fourth turn through the hollows, time blurring for him now, he was sleeping in fits, jolting awake to the sensation of being followed. Not by a car, but by something intangible, a presence that clung to the vehicle like damp rot. He described pulling over once, heart pounding, and finding handprints on the fogged windows from the inside, as if another passenger had been breathing there with him. Rationalizing it as condensation, he wiped them away, but the unease lingered, festering. The road ahead steepened, hairpin turns forcing me to downshift, the engine whining in protest. I glanced at the journal again during a straight stretch, Jack's words mirroring my growing discomfort. He wrote of questioning his own sanity, wondering if the divorce he'd fled, much like mine, had cracked something fundamental in him. The paranoia built slowly, he said, like mold in a damp basement. First a spot, then a spread, until the whole structure felt compromised. He started seeing patterns in the mile markers, numbers that repeated like a code, warning him to turn back. I rubbed my eyes, the dashboard lights flickering as dusk deepened. The forest seemed denser here, branches arching overhead like a tunnel. Jack's handwriting devolved further, sentences fragmenting. He confessed to talking to himself in the car, arguing with shadows that he swore moved independently of the light. One entry detailed a stop at a derelict gas station, the pump's nozzle cold as ice in his hand, the attendant's gaze lingering too long, mouth moving without sound. Jack fled without paying, convinced the man was part of it, a sentinel posted to report his progress. My tank was low. I made a mental note to find fuel soon, but the road felt endless now, the map on my phone showing only a spider web of lines with no clear exits. As I read on, Jack's descent accelerated. He described nights where sleep brought dreams of the mountains folding in, compressing the world until he was trapped in the car's confines with an unseen companion. Awake, he heard scratches along the undercarriage, like claws testing the metal. Paranoia turned to fear, then to a frantic certainty that the journey wasn't his choice anymore. The road was directing him, curve by inexorable curve. The air in the car grew stale, heavy with the scent of aged leather. I cracked the window, letting in the cool mountain breeze, but it carried a whisper of leaves rustling far too purposefully, as if the woods were leaning in to listen. Jack's final entries were a rush of scrawled confessions. He wrote of realizing the journal itself was a trap, a way for whatever haunted these passes to infect the next driver. He tried to discard it once, hurling it into a ravine, but found it back in the glove box hours later, pages open to where he'd left off. I slammed on the brakes at an overlook, the tires skidding slightly on loose gravel. My hands trembled as I forced myself to read the last page, the ink smudged as if by sweat or tears. Jack described the exact spot. A narrow bridge over a churning creek, the cliffs rising sheer on one side, a sheer drop on the other. The time, sunset on a clear October evening, much like tonight. He wrote of the realization hitting him like a blow. The presence wasn't in the car or the woods. It was in him now, having jumped from the previous owner through the journal's words. The road had led him here, to this moment, and he was no longer driving. He was being driven. The bridge loomed ahead, rusted iron gleaming in the fading light, the creek below roaring faintly like suppressed laughter. I stared at the journal in my lap, its cover warm under my fingers. The words blurred, or maybe my vision did. Had I heard that murmur again, closer now, from the back seat? I glanced in the rear view, empty of course, but the shadows there seemed deeper, expectant. I tossed the journal onto the dash, or meant to. My hand hesitated, fingers lingering on the leather. The engine idled roughly, urging me forward. Part of me screamed to turn back, to abandon the car and hike to the nearest town. But the road stretched on, whispering promises of escape just around the bend. I pressed the gas, crossing the bridge slowly, the journal's weight pulling at me like an anchor. As the mountains swallowed the last of the light, I wondered how long it would take before my own words filled those pages, continuing the chain for whoever came next. The whispers grew louder, not in the wind but inside, and I drove on, unable to stop. I remember that night like it was etched into my skull, every detail sharp enough to cut. I'd been driving for hours, heading back from a late shift at the warehouse in the next county over. It was one of those jobs that paid just enough to keep the lights on, but left you bone-tired and staring at the road ahead like it was the only thing holding your life together. The interstate stretched out dark and endless, flanked by thick woods that swallowed the edges of the world. No street lights out there, just the occasional reflector post glowing faintly in my headlights. The storm hit without mercy right around midnight. 1 minute, the sky was a bruised purple, spitting scattered drops. The next, it unleashed hell. Rain hammered the windshield like 1,000 fists, turning the glass into a blurred sheet of water. My wipers were on full, slapping back and forth, but they couldn't keep up. The noise filled the car, a relentless roar that drowned out the radio static and even the hum of the engine. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles aching, squinting through the deluge. Visibility was down to maybe 20 feet, and the road felt like it was dissolving under the tires. I wasn't panicking yet, not exactly. I'd driven in bad weather before, but the lightning was getting vicious. Jagged forks splitting the sky every few seconds, illuminating the trees in stark white flashes. Thunder rolled in right after, deep and vibrating through the chassis. My old sedan wasn't built for this. It shuddered with every gust. Up ahead, the shoulder beckoned, a narrow strip of gravel edged by that impenetrable wall of forest. Better to pull over than risk hydroplaning into a ditch or worse. I eased off the gas, signaling even though there was no one around to see it, and guided the car onto the shoulder. The tires crunched over loose stones, then settled. I killed the engine to save gas, figuring I'd wait it out. The rain intensified, pounding the roof like it wanted to cave it in. Inside the car it was warmer, but the humidity seeped through the seals, making everything feel clammy. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake the exhaustion. My phone was in the cup holder, screen dark. No point checking for signal. Out here it was a dead zone half the time anyway. Minutes dragged by. Maybe 10, maybe 20. I lost track. The storm showed no signs of letting up. The noise was oppressive, isolating me in this metal cocoon. I started to feel that itch, the one that comes when you're alone too long with your thoughts. Work had been hell that week. Endless pallets, a foreman writing me about quotas, and Sarah's voicemail from earlier, cool and distant, saying we needed to talk about us. Yeah, that kind of night. I wasn't in the mood to dwell on it. A flash of lightning lit up the cabin, and in that split second something caught my eye outside the passenger window. The trees, maybe? No, that didn't feel right. I sat up straighter, heart picking up a notch. The rain blurred everything, but the headlights were still on, casting two pale beams into the downpour just beyond the hood. I hadn't turned them off. Habit, I guess. They cut through the sheets of water, illuminating the wet asphalt and the edge of the woods. I fumbled for my phone, thumbing on the flashlight. The beam was narrower, brighter, piercing the chaos. I swept it toward the window, angling it carefully to avoid the glare on the glass. That's when I saw them. 3 figures, standing just at the perimeter where the headlights faded into shadow. They were tall, unnaturally so, like they'd been stretched out by some cruel hand. 7 feet, maybe more, their forms gaunt and elongated, limbs too long, torsos too narrow. They didn't move, not an inch, rooted there in the storm as if it were a mild drizzle. Rain poured down around them, but it didn't touch them. No water beaded on their skin or clothes. They were dry, pristine, like the weather bent away at their presence. My breath caught, fogging the window for a second. I wiped it clear with my sleeve, heart thudding now, loud in my ears. They were facing the car, heads tilted slightly forward, staring right at me. Even through the rain-streaked glass, I could feel it, their gaze locked on, unblinking. What the hell were they? Hikers? No, not out here, not at midnight in this torrent. Trespassers? Their outlines were wrong, too skeletal, clothes hanging loose like rags on wire frames. Faces. I couldn't make out faces clearly, just pale smudges where eyes should be fixed and intent. I told myself it was a trick of the light, fatigue playing games. I'd read about stuff like this. Sleep deprivation hallucinations, shadows in the storm. But they didn't flicker or dissolve. They just stood there, silent sentinels, the rain cascading untouched around their feet. The phone's beam trembled in my hand. My arm was shaking. I killed it, plunging the interior into dimness, then flicked it back on. Still there, motionless. Panic clawed up my throat. What do you do in a situation like this? Drive away? The road was a river now, and my tires were shot for anything slick. Call for help? I glanced at the phone. No bars, just the emergency dialer taunting me. It rang once, twice, then cut to static, swallowed by the thunder. I muttered a curse, slamming my palm on the dash. Think, damn it. Maybe they were lost, hurt, needed assistance. Yeah, right. In this weather? And why weren't they soaked? I leaned closer to the window, straining to see details. Their postures were rigid, almost posed, like mannequins forgotten in the woods. No umbrellas, no rain gear, just those thin, elongated shapes. One shifted, or maybe I imagined it, a subtle tilt of the head, as if acknowledging my stare. My skin prickled, a cold sweat breaking out despite the humid air. They weren't animals. Too upright, too deliberate. People? God, I hope not. Something about their stillness screamed wrongness, like they'd been waiting there all along for someone like me to stop. The storm raged on, the roar masking any sound they might make. Were they whispering? No, that was my mind filling in blanks. I gripped the keys in the ignition, turning them. The engine coughed to life, headlights flaring brighter. For a heartbeat, the beams washed over the nearest one, highlighting its form. Thin arms hung at its sides, fingers elongated, almost claw-like, but not quite. Its face, pale, hollow-cheeked, eyes dark pits that seemed to absorb the light, staring, always staring. I threw the car into drive, foot hovering over the gas. Just go, floor it, get back on the interstate, put miles between us. But as I eased forward, gravel crunching, they didn't react. No waving, no approach, just that unwavering watch. The car lurched onto the pavement, tires slipping for a second in the standing water. I gunned it, the engine whining, rain lashing the sides like punishment. In the rear-view mirror, they receded, swallowed by the woods. But I swear they turned as one, tracking my taillights. The road curved and they were gone. But the feeling lingered, a weight on my chest, like eyes still boring into my back. I drove faster than I should, weaving through the spray, pulse hammering. No more stops, no looking back. By the time I hit the state line, the rain had eased to a drizzle, the sky lightening to a sickly gray. I pulled into the first gas station, hands still trembling as I filled the tank. The attendant, a grizzled guy with a name tag reading Earl, eyed me funny when I asked if he'd heard about any weirdos on the interstate. "Storm brings out all kinds," he grunted, but his voice lacked conviction. I didn't press. That was 3 months ago. I don't drive that stretch anymore. Took a different route to work, even if it adds an hour. Nights like this, when thunder rumbles in the distance, I check the windows twice. Phone flashlight ready. Sarah and I are done. She said I seemed distant, haunted even. She's not wrong. Sometimes in the quiet before sleep, I wonder if they were real. Hallucinations don't stare back like that, don't make the air feel thick with expectation. Last week I found an old Reddit thread about sightings on that interstate. Tall figures in the woods, untouched by rain. Comments dismissed it as urban legend, but one user, anonymous, posted coordinates that matched my pull-off spot. They wait for the storm, it said, and they remember. I closed the app, heart sinking. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm just tired. But I keep the keys close at night, listening for the rain. I never thought hauling my uncle's stuff across state lines would turn into the kind of night that sticks with you. The kind where every shadow in your rearview mirror feels like it's watching back. Uncle Ray had passed 2 weeks ago. Heart attack, quick and quiet, they said. No drama, just him slumping over in his armchair with a half-empty beer on the side table. He'd lived alone in that cluttered house on the edge of town, the kind of place where the walls leaned in like they were tired of standing straight. I'd been the only family close enough to handle the cleanup, so there I was, 32 years old, squeezing what was left of his life into the back of a rented cargo van. It was mostly junk, faded photo albums, a rusted toolbox, stacks of yellowed newspapers, and those weird knickknacks he collected from flea markets. Porcelain figurines of birds that looked more like they were screaming than singing. I'd locked the back doors tight before hitting the road, not wanting anything to spill out during the 12-hour drive to the auction house in the city. Ray had always been a hoarder, the type who saw value in rust and rot. "Nothing's waste if you give it time," he'd say, his voice gravelly from years of chain smoking. I figured I'd sort it later, but for now the van smelled like dust and old leather, a faint reminder of him that made the miles drag on. By midnight, the highway had emptied out, just me and the hum of the engine cutting through the dark. I'd been pushing hard, coffee sloshing in a thermos beside me, eyes burning from the glare of oncoming lights. The GPS said another 4 hours to go, but my tank was dipping low, so I pulled off at the next exit for gas. It was one of those rundown stations, the kind lit by a single buzzing fluorescent sign, pumps shadowed by overgrown weeds. No attendants, just a self-serve setup and a vending machine that looked like it had been there since the 80s. I killed the engine and stepped out, the chill of the night air hitting me like a slap. My breath fogged in the pump's harsh light as I swiped my card and started filling up. That's when I heard it first, a soft thump from inside the van. I froze, nozzle in hand, glancing over my shoulder. The cargo area was a solid metal box, windows blacked out with privacy film Ray had insisted on slapping on years ago for his deliveries. Probably just something shifting, I told myself. The road had been bumpy, and I'd loaded in a hurry. Tools rattling, maybe a box tipping. I finished pumping and climbed back in, but as I turned the key, there it was again. Another thump, followed by what sounded like a lighter tap, rhythmic almost. I shook my head, cranking the radio for distraction. Static crackled through old rock tunes, drowning it out. Back on the highway, the taps faded into the background noise of tires on asphalt. I tried to focus on the road, but exhaustion was creeping in, my mind wandering to Ray. We'd never been close. He was my dad's estranged brother, the one who showed up at holidays with tall tales and empty promises. Last time I'd seen him, he'd been ranting about things people leave behind, eyes glassy like he was seeing ghosts in his living room. Heart attack took him before I could ask what he meant. Now here I was ferrying his ghosts across the state. 20 minutes later, it started up again. Tap, tap, tap. Not random this time, deliberate, like fingers drumming on wood. I turned the radio louder, but the sound cut through, steady from the back. I gripped the wheel tighter, glancing in the side mirror. Nothing but darkness behind the tinted glass. Come on, I muttered to myself. It's just the load settling. But doubt gnawed at me. I double-checked the locks. Everything was strapped down. Maybe a loose latch or the wind whistling through a crack. Yeah, that had to be it. The taps paused when I shifted in my seat, adjusting the AC vent. Coincidence, right? I accelerated a little, hoping the speed would shake it loose. But then, as I drummed my fingers on the wheel to stay awake, tap, tap, tap on the steering column, the response came immediately from behind. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks, sharp and even, mirroring mine exactly. My stomach dropped. I stopped tapping, breath catching in my throat. Silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then slower, 3 more knocks echoed through the van's frame like an answer to a question I hadn't asked. Heart pounding, I pulled over onto the shoulder, hazards flashing in the night. The highway was deserted, just the occasional semi-rumbling past. Hello? I called out, voice cracking a bit. Stupid, I know, yelling at boxes. But it felt real now, too insistent to ignore. No response. I sat there, engine idling, staring at the divider between cab and cargo. It was a thin metal wall, riveted shut, with a small vent grate near the floor. The knocks had come from somewhere low, like from the base of the boxes. Ray's face flashed in my mind, his crooked smile, the way he'd knock on tabletops when telling stories 3 times, like a ritual. For the ones who listen, he'd joke, but there was always something off in his eyes. I rubbed my temples, trying to shake the unease. It was late, I was tired, my brain was playing tricks. But when I leaned forward to fiddle with the radio again, the taps resumed. 3 slow ones pausing, then 3 quick, matching my movements, responding, like something or someone was in there, aware, waiting. I grabbed my phone, flashlight app on, and twisted in my seat to peer through the grate. The beam caught dust motes swirling in stale air, illuminating stacks of cardboard and the glint of metal from his old toolbox. Nothing moved. No shapes, no shadows out of place. But the air felt heavier back there, carrying a faint metallic tang that turned my stomach. "This isn't happening," I whispered, more to convince myself. I climbed out, boots crunching on gravel, and circled to the rear doors. They were locked with a heavy padlock I'd clicked shut myself. I tugged on the handle, solid, unmoving. No give, no rattle. Inside again, I locked the cab doors, pulse racing. The knocks came once more as I settled back. 3 deliberate raps that vibrated through the seat, desperate almost, like a signal from someone trapped. Morse code? No, just knocks. 3, pause, 3. Like the old prison signal for, "Are you there?" I'd read about it once in some true crime book. But who? Ray was gone, cremated even. His ashes were in an urn on the passenger seat, for God's sake. I glanced at it, the plain ceramic vase catching the dashboard glow. Empty trip otherwise. The idea hit me then, irrational but clawing. What if Ray had stashed something alive in there? A pet he'd forgotten to mention? No, he'd hated animals. Or worse, something he'd hidden, some secret from his reclusive life. The knocks sped up insistent, as if urging me to turn around. I accelerated instead, merging back onto the highway, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. "Stop it," I said aloud, voice steadying. "It's the boxes. Vibration from the road." But they didn't stop. They adapted, slower when I slowed, pausing when I held still. Once, when I muttered a curse and slapped the dash in frustration, 3 sharp knocks answered immediately, echoing like mockery. Miles blurred by, the city lights finally smudging the horizon. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of Ray's life. The rumors from neighbors, odd hours, visitors who never came inside, packages he'd receive and lock away. "He kept things that shouldn't be kept," one woman had said at the funeral, her voice low. I'd laughed it off then, but now, with the van feeling smaller, more confined, doubt festered. What if it wasn't boxes? What if something had hitched a ride? Something Ray had trapped back there, and now it was free enough to knock? By the time I reached the auction lot at dawn, the sun creeping up like a reluctant witness, the knocking had quieted to faint echoes, as if whatever it was knew we were close to release. I parked in the empty lot, hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. The padlock clicked open and I swung the doors wide, morning light flooding the cargo area. Boxes sat undisturbed, labels in Ray's scrawl. The toolbox, the figurines, all just things. No movement, no sign of life. Relief washed over me, mixed with a hollow ache. I'd imagined it all, the fatigue and grief twisting sounds into signals. I unloaded methodically, piece by piece, until the van was empty. But as I turned to leave, a final sound stopped me. 3 soft knocks from inside the now vacant back, hollow against the metal walls. No source, no echo. Just the van, breathing its last secret. I slammed the doors shut and walked away, the auction house looming like a grave. Ray's stuff would sell, scattered to strangers, but whatever he'd left behind, the real weight, it followed me out, tapping in the silence of my thoughts. I'd been driving through rural Pennsylvania for hours, the kind of back roads that twist like forgotten veins through hills too steep to farm and woods too thick to clear. My old pickup truck rattled along, the engine protesting every bump in the cracked asphalt. I was heading home from a job site up near Scranton, trying to shave time off the usual route. The interstate was clogged with weekend traffic, semis belching exhaust like dragons in the summer haze. So when I spotted the sign for a local shortcut, some winding county road that promised to cut through the Alleghenies, I figured why not? But my phone had 0 bars out here, and the built-in nav was glitchy from years of neglect. That left the ancient GPS unit I dug out of the glove box, a relic from my dad's days trucking cross-country. It was bulky, with a cracked screen and a voice like a robot on its last battery. I punched in my destination, a small town just over the border in Ohio. The unit beeped to life, its synthetic monotone filling the cab. Proceed on current road for 2 miles, then turn left onto County Route 47. Simple enough. I followed, the sun dipping low enough to paint the trees in bloody oranges and reds. The road narrowed, gravel crunching under the tires, and the map on the screen showed a straight shot through what looked like nothing but forest. No towns, no gas stations, just green blotting out everything. About 20 minutes in, the voice changed. Not dramatically at first. It was subtle, like a crackle in the speaker. Turn right in 0.3 miles, it said, but the pitch lifted at the end, almost questioning. I glanced at the screen. No errors, just the arrow blinking insistently off the main path. The shortcut it suggested wasn't on the digital map anymore, but a faint line veered into denser woods, promising to reconnect farther ahead. Faster this way, the voice added unprompted, softer now, with a lilt that didn't belong to silicon and circuits. I shook my head, blaming the fading light or my exhaustion. The truck's headlights flicked on automatically as dusk settled, beams slicing through the gathering fog that rolled down from the hills like smoke from a dying fire. I took the turn anyway. Why not? The main road was a slog, and this path felt inviting somehow. The trees closed in tighter, branches scraping the roof like fingers testing a lock. My radio had long since dissolved into static, the only sound the hum of the engine and that voice. Good choice, it whispered next, the word drawing out, seductive in its hush. I gripped the wheel harder, knuckles whitening. Seductive? That was ridiculous. It was just a machine, programmed decades ago. But the tone had shifted fully now. No monotone, but a woman's voice, breathy and warm, like someone leaning close in the dark. Follow me, and you'll be home before the stars come out. I laughed it off, a nervous bark that echoed in the empty cab. Home was still hours away, even on this supposed shortcut. The road, if you could call it that, degenerated into dirt packed with ruts, the truck bouncing so hard my teeth clicked. The GPS screen flickered, showing a route that looped through places I'd never heard of. Hollow Bend, Whisper Hollow, names that sounded made up, like whispers from old folk tales my grandmother used to scare me with. Pennsylvania had its share of those, stories of roads that led nowhere, of travelers vanishing into the mist. But that was kid stuff. I was 38, divorced, with a mortgage and a stack of bills. I didn't have time for ghost stories. Turn left at the old mill, the voice cooed. And there it was, a sagging structure half swallowed by vines, its wheel long rotted away. No signs marked this path, just a faint trail overgrown with weeds that whipped at the undercarriage. I hesitated, foot hovering over the brake. The map on my phone, when I'd had signal earlier, didn't show anything like this. But the voice persisted, intimate now, like a lover's murmur. Trust me. I know these roads better than you ever will. Just a little farther, and you'll see. Against my better judgment, I turned. The psychological pull was stronger than I wanted to admit. The promise of speed, of escaping this endless green maze. But doubt crept in with the shadows. What if this was leading me deeper into nowhere? My headlights caught glimpses of the impossible. A deer standing too still in the brush, its eyes reflecting back not fear but curiosity, like it was watching me go. The air through the cracked window carried a scent of damp earth and something sweeter, like overripe fruit left to ferment. Hours blurred, or maybe it was minutes. Time felt slippery here, the sun refusing to set fully, hovering on the horizon in a perpetual twilight. The voice guided me through turns that defied logic. A hairpin left into a ravine that shouldn't exist, a straightaway that climbed a hill too sheer for any road. "You're doing so well," it purred, the words wrapping around my thoughts. "Don't look back, only forward with me." I caught myself talking to it, muttering questions under my breath. "Where the hell are we?" No answer, just that chuckle, low and inviting, vibrating through the speakers. My mind raced ahead, piecing together excuses. Carbon monoxide from the old truck, exhaustion playing tricks. But deep down, I knew it was more. The forests whispered back, leaves rustling without wind, shapes shifting in the periphery that vanished when I turned. Psychological isolation, that's what this was. The backwoods closing in, amplifying every creak of the cab, every flicker of the dash lights. I'd read about delivery drivers going stir-crazy on long hauls, hearing voices in the static. But this voice knew things. "Slow down here. The bridge ahead is weak from the rains last spring." And sure enough, the wooden span groaned under the tires, planks splintering faintly but holding. By what felt like midnight, though the sky stayed that bruised purple, the route promised to reconnect with the interstate. Relief washed over me, mingled with annoying unease. The voice had grown bolder, interspersing directions with personal asides. "You look tired. Pull over if you need to rest. I'll keep watch." It was as if it could see me, sense the sweat beading on my forehead, the way my hands trembled on the wheel. I didn't pull over. Instead, I accelerated, chasing the end of this nightmare. The final turn led to a clearing, or what should have been one. The trees parted abruptly, revealing not highway lights but an endless stretch of fog-shrouded path, unmarked and unending. The GPS screen went blank, then lit up with a single line. "You're home now. Stay with me." The voice wasn't seductive anymore. It was hungry, a whisper that clawed at the edges of my sanity. No beep to recalculate, no map to orient. Just that voice looping in my head even as the speakers fell silent. I slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a halt on the muddy verge. Heart pounding, I ripped the GPS from its mount, cords dangling like veins. But as I hurled it out the window into the underbrush, the voice followed, not from the unit but from the air itself, echoing faintly from the trees. "Don't leave. We're just getting started." I drove back the way I came, blindly, until the path spat me out onto a familiar county road, the interstate signs gleaming like salvation. Dawn was breaking by then, the sun finally cresting, but the chill lingered in my bones. I ditched the truck at the first gas station, called a tow, and hitched the rest of the way home. That GPS? I never retrieved it. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the world outside fades to black, I swear I hear it again. A soft, inviting murmur, promising shortcuts I know better than to take. The Nevada desert stretched out like an endless sea of cracked earth and bleached bones, the kind of place where the horizon plays tricks on you, making you question if you're moving at all. I'd been hauling freight from Reno to Vegas for over a decade, the same route night after night, the hum of the diesel engine my only constant companion. That night, the stars were sharp pinpricks overhead, and the radio crackled with static more than music. My cab smelled of stale coffee and worn leather, the kind of scent that lulls you into complacency on these long hauls. My phone buzzed on the dash, jolting me from the autopilot trance. Unknown number. I ignored it at first, probably a wrong dial or spam, but it buzzed again, insistent, and the voicemail icon lit up. Curiosity got the better of me. I thumbed the play button, keeping one eye on the empty two-lane blacktop ahead. The voice was low, almost a whisper, distorted like it was recorded in a wind tunnel. "You're gripping the wheel too tight, aren't you? That vein in your neck is pulsing. Relax, the desert's got plenty of room." I slammed on the brakes, the trailer fishtailing just enough to remind me of the weight behind me. Heart pounding, I snatched the phone and replayed it. No doubt about it. My surroundings, my exact tension. Who the hell was this? I scanned the mirrors. Empty highway, no headlights in the distance, just the faint glow of my own taillights fading into the void. A prank? Had to be. Some bored trucker with a scanner app, guessing at shadows. I deleted the message and cranked the window down, letting the dry wind whip through to clear my head. Back on the gas, I pushed the speed up to 65, telling myself to shake it off. 20 minutes later, another buzz. Same unknown number. I let it go to voicemail this time, my palms slick against the wheel. When I played it, the voice was clearer, closer. "The coffee in your thermos is cold now. You should sip it anyway. It'll steady your hands. See that shadow on the roadside? It's just a Joshua tree not moving." I nearly swerved off the shoulder. The thermos sat right there, half empty from my last pull an hour back. And yeah, there was a twisted tree silhouette blurring past, its arms like skeletal fingers. This wasn't guesswork. Someone knew my route, my habits. I fumbled for the phone's settings, blocking the number, but a third message slipped through before it took. "Blocking me won't help. You're accelerating now, aren't you? The needle's at 72. Slow down before you miss the next curve." The curve came up fast, a gentle bend I'd navigated 1,000 times, but my foot hit the brake harder than necessary, tires humming against the asphalt. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the AC blasting. Who was this? A stalker? Some ex I'd forgotten? I'd kept my life simple, no family drama, no close ties, just the road and the paycheck. I glanced in the side mirrors again, half expecting a car to materialize from the dark. Nothing but the endless flat line of desert, dotted with the occasional tumbleweeds skittering like fleeing animals. By the time the sun cracked the eastern sky, painting the sands in blood-red hues, I'd convinced myself it was a glitch, maybe a hacked voice AI pulling from traffic cams or GPS data. Truckers talked about that stuff, apps that tracked routes fed into prank bots. I pulled into a rest stop near Searchlight, the kind of forgotten outpost with a single pump and a vending machine that ate quarters. Parked under the flickering sodium light, I stepped out to stretch, my boots crunching on gravel. The air was still cool, carrying the faint metallic tang of distant rain that never came. No new messages. Relief washed over me, but it was thin, like the layer of frost on the pump handle. I refilled the tank, grabbed a candy bar, and climbed back in. As I merged onto the highway, the phone buzzed once more. I hesitated, then played it. The voice had shifted, a hint of amusement creeping in. "You ate that chocolate too fast. Crumbs on your shirt. Don't wipe them off yet. Look how the light catches them as the sun rises." My hand froze midway to my chest, where the candy wrapper had indeed left flecks of wrapper and chocolate. The dawn light slanted through the windshield, highlighting them like tiny accusations. Okay, this was beyond tech. Someone was close. Had to be. I punched the gas, weaving a little as I checked every vehicle in sight. A semi passed on the left, its driver a burly guy in a flannel shirt giving me a nod through the window. Harmless. Behind me, a dusty sedan with California plates, keeping a steady distance. No one loomed too near. The messages kept coming, sporadic but relentless, each one peeling back another layer of my isolation. One described the way I rubbed my eyes after hours of staring at the white lines, the itch from desert dust I'd swear wasn't there before. Another noted the song on the radio, a forgotten country tune about lost highways, and how my fingers tapped the dash in rhythm, even though I hated the genre. "You're tapping to fight the boredom," it said. "But it's not boredom, is it? It's the weight of being seen." Paranoia set in deep, gnawing at the edges of my focus. I started imagining eyes in the scrub brush, silhouettes that dissolved when I blinked. The desert, usually a blank canvas for my thoughts, now felt alive, watchful. Why me? What did they want? I called my dispatcher from a hands-free setup, voice steady but clipped. "Hey Mike, it's Tom. Any weird calls about my rig? Someone messing with me?" Mike chuckled, the sound tinny over the speaker. "Tom, you're out in the middle of nowhere. Only calls I get are from you complainers. What's eating you?" "Nothing," I muttered, ending the call. Admitting it aloud would make it real, tether the fear to something solid. Instead, I scanned the mirrors obsessively, cataloging every car, the pickup with the rusted bumper, the RV lumbering like a beached whale, the motorcycle that buzzed past and vanished ahead. None lingered. None matched the voice's intimacy. Hours blurred into the midday heat haze, the cab turning into a sweatbox even with the vents wide open. The messages paused for a stretch, long enough that I started to breathe easier, the knot in my gut loosening. Maybe they'd lost signal or got bored. I was closing in on Vegas now, the faint shimmer of the strip on the horizon like a promise of crowds and noise to drown this out. I'd report it at the depot, get the number traced if dispatch had the pull. Then, as the sun dipped low again, casting long shadows that clawed across the road, the phone went silent for what felt like an eternity. I checked the screen every few miles, willing it blank. Relief built, fragile but real, until the final buzz. Unknown number. I stared at it, engine idling at a stop sign on the outskirts of town. The voice, when I played it, was calm, almost gentle. No description, no taunt. Just 3 words. "Look in the back seat." The world tilted. My back seat, behind the passenger chair, a cramped space piled with maps, an old jacket, and a cooler from last week's run. Empty, always empty. But the words hung there, echoing in the sudden silence of the cab. The AC hummed faintly, the only sound besides my ragged breathing. I twisted slowly, dread pooling cold in my veins, forcing my eyes to the shadowed nook. At first, nothing. Just the familiar clutter, the jacket draped like a forgotten skin. Then a glint. My spare key fob, which I'd sworn was in the glove box. And beneath the jacket's fold, something shifted. Not much, a ripple like fabric settling, but the air felt thicker, charged, as if the desert's dryness had seeped in, carrying whispers with it. I didn't scream. I didn't bolt. I just sat there, engine rumbling, staring until the shadows deepened, and the first neon lights of Vegas flickered alive in the distance. Whoever it was, they were right. I was seen. And the road, that endless ribbon I'd trusted for years, suddenly felt like it led nowhere safe. I threw the truck into gear and drove on, but the mirrors stayed empty, the phone silent. The real horror wasn't what I saw back there. It was knowing they could make me look at all. I've always been the type to take shortcuts, the kind that shave off hours on a map and make me feel like I've outsmarted the world. That night in the Pacific Northwest, I was hauling ass back to Seattle from a job site up near the Canadian border. The interstate was clogged with summer traffic, semis crawling like sleepy beetles, so I veered onto this old logging road my buddy swore by. Single lane, gravel crunching under the tires, flanked by walls of towering firs that swallowed the sky. It was late, around midnight, and the rain had just started, a fine mist that smeared my windshield like a bad memory. My truck's headlights carved narrow tunnels through the darkness, picking out the muddy ruts and the occasional mile marker nailed to a tree. I figured it was about 30 miles of this. Then I'd hit the highway and be home by dawn. The radio was static, so I had the window cracked, letting in the damp chill and the rhythmic patter of drops on the roof. It kept me awake, that sound, steady as a heartbeat. After what felt like an hour, I passed marker 47. Nothing unusual. The road curved gently left, then right, the forest pressing in closer. 48. 49. I started to relax, humming some old tune to myself. But then 50 came around the next bend, and I swear I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. The trees were the same. Same knots in the bark, same ferns spilling over the edges. Maybe I was just tired. 51. 52. The rain picked up, drumming harder now, turning the road into a slick ribbon. I wiped the fog from the glass and pushed the wipers faster. By 53, doubt crept in. Hadn't I seen that boulder before, the one shaped like a clenched fist? No way. I shook it off, blamed the monotony. These roads looped in your head after a while. 54, 55. And then, just past 56, the next marker gleamed wet in my lights. 47. I slammed the brakes, gravel spraying, heart kicking up. What the hell? I killed the engine and sat there, engine ticking cool, listening to the rain sheet down. Backed up slow, tires slipping, and there it was, 56 again, right where it should be. But forward? The road stretched on, identical, into the black. I laughed at first, a short bark that echoed in the cab. Must have misread it, fatigue playing tricks. I drove on, slower now, eyes glued to the markers. 47, 48. The same damn curve, the same boulder. My stomach twisted. This wasn't right. I stopped again, phone out. No signal, of course, in this godforsaken stretch. The forest was silent except for the rain, a constant whisper that made the isolation feel heavier. Okay, plan, turn around, backtrack to the main road. Simple, but as I swung the wheel, the headlights swept over the way I'd come. Same trees, same ferns, and there, just at the edge of the beam, maybe 200 yards off, stood a figure. Tall, motionless, like a shadow carved from the night itself. No outline clear enough to make out details, just a silhouette against the faint gray of the road ahead. Or behind. I blinked, heart thudding. It couldn't be. I'd been alone this whole time. I gunned it forward instead, away from whatever that was. The road curved and around the bend. Another marker, 50-something. Looping again, sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill. I kept driving, faster, the truck fishtailing on the wet gravel. Every curve brought the same views, dripping branches, mud-slicked edges. And then, after what had to be hours, my dashboard clock said 2 a.m. now, the figure appeared again. Further down, just beyond where the headlights faded into mist. still unmoving, still silent. Watching, waiting. Panic clawed up my throat. I yelled into the empty cab, "What the fuck is this?" My voice bounced back, swallowed by the trees. No answer, just the rain's relentless tattoo. I tried to think logically. Maybe a prank, locals stringing up markers wrong, or some optical illusion from the curves. But deep down, I knew better. This road wasn't letting me go. It was a loop, a trap of asphalt and pine, and I was circling the drain. I drove through the night, or what felt like night. The sky never lightened. It stayed that oppressive black, rain falling in sheets now, flooding the ditches. My eyes burned, lids heavy, but sleep wasn't an option. Every time I rounded a curve, there it was, the figure, a fraction closer each loop. Not moving toward me, just there, silent. Unblinking, I imagined, though I couldn't see its face. Coat? Hat? Nothing to grab onto. Just presence, heavy as the fog rolling in. By what I guessed was morning, though no sun broke through, I was unraveling, talked to myself to stay sane. "Come on, man, you fixed worse than this. Engine trouble, blowouts in the woods. This is just geography screwing with you." But the words rang hollow. The mile markers mocked me. 47 to 56, reset, repeat. I'd tried stopping to hike into the trees once, early on, flashlight cutting through the underbrush. But after 10 minutes of brambles tearing at my jeans and the rain soaking me through, the road called me back. Couldn't leave the truck. It was my lifeline. Besides, the forest felt wrong, thicker, endless, like it would swallow me whole if I strayed. Hours blurred, maybe a full day. My stomach growled, empty except for a stale granola bar. Thirst scraped my throat. The figure was clearer now, or seemed to be. Around the next curve, 51, always 51, its shape resolved. Broad shoulders, standing stock still in the downpour. No car, no gear. Just there. I slowed as I approached, headlights pinning it like a specimen. 50 yards, 40. It didn't flinch, didn't wave, just waited, beyond the light's full reach, as if daring me to get closer. I stopped the truck, engine idling low, wipers thumping back and forth. Rain hammered the roof like impatient fingers. "Hey!" I shouted, door creaking open. My boots splashed into a puddle, cold seeping through. "You lost? Need help?" Silence. The figure didn't stir. I took a step, then another, gravel crunching underfoot. The air smelled of wet earth and decay, something sharper beneath it, like rot from fallen logs. 30 yards. My pulse roared in my ears. And then it hit me. A wave of dread so profound it rooted me. This wasn't a person. Couldn't be. People move, react. This thing was part of the loop, a sentinel or a lure, drawing me deeper into the repetition. I backed away, heart slamming, and hauled myself into the truck. Slammed the door, locked it, drove past faster, tires hydroplaning on the slick road. But the loops tightened. Markers blurred in my vision, 47, 48, always the same. The figure appeared sooner each time, closer to the curve's end. My mind fractured under the strain. Memories surfaced unbidden. The ex who left because I was always chasing shortcuts in life. The job that kept me on these endless drives. The quiet fear that I was going nowhere, fast. Was this the road's way of showing me, trapping me in my own patterns? Night fell again, Or maybe it never left. Time lost meaning in the rain's ceaseless drone. I drove until my hands cramped on the wheel, until hallucinations danced in the periphery, shadows in the trees that weren't there. The figure was right at the headlight's edge now, every loop, unmoving, eternal. On what felt like the third dawn, that pale, rain-diffused light, I made a decision. No more running the loop. I'd ram it if I had to. Accelerate into the figure, break the cycle. As the curve approached, there it stood, clear as day in the mist, tall, indistinct, waiting. I floored it. The truck surged, gravel flying, headlights blazing. Closer, closer. The shape loomed, unchanging. 20 yards. 10. Impact braced in my gut. But it didn't hit. The road curved away at the last second, or seemed to, swallowing the figure into shadow. I passed through empty space, brakes screeching as I fishtailed to a halt. Marker 47 ahead, mocking, tears mixed with rain on my face. I was done, leaning on the horn, a long, wailing blast that shattered the quiet. I screamed into the void. "Let me out! God damn it, let me go!" Silence answered, broken only by the rain's indifferent patter. The figure reappeared down the road, further now, just beyond the lights, inviting me back into the dance. And so I drove on, because what else was there? The loop held me, the forest watched, and the night stretched forever. I've always hated driving through New Jersey. Not the turnpike slog or the industrial sprawl around Newark. Those are just annoyances you grit your teeth through. No, it's the suburbs that get under my skin. Those endless stretches of cookie-cutter neighborhoods that seem to multiply like some kind of suburban virus. Row after row of split-level houses with vinyl siding in shades of beige and taupe, manicured lawns that look like they're stamped out by a machine, and streetlights that buzz faintly in the dusk. They make you feel like you're trapped in a simulation, looping through the same nowhere without ever really moving forward. That evening, I was heading west on Route 22, cutting through one of those bedroom communities to shave time off my trip back from a job interview in Edison. It was just after 7, the sun dipping low enough to turn everything a hazy orange. My car was a 2012 Honda Accord, silver, nothing special. I'd bought it used a couple years back because it was reliable and cheap on gas. As I merged onto a side street to bypass some construction, I started noticing the driveways. The first one didn't register right away. A silver Accord parked nose in, its taillights catching the fading light. I glanced at it in the rear view, thinking nothing of it. Plenty of people drive these things. But then the next house had one too. Exact same model, same dull silver finish, not a scratch or dent out of place. And the one after that? By the 4th or 5th, my stomach started to twist. I slowed down without meaning to, my foot easing off the accelerator as I scanned the curbs. Every driveway, every open garage, silver Accords lined up like soldiers. No variations, no Toyotas or Fords mixed in, just row after identical row of my car. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe this was one of those culty neighborhoods where everyone buys the same model for some HOA rule, like those stories you hear about gated communities enforcing uniformity down to the mailbox color. But that didn't sit right. New Jersey's full of quirky spots, sure, but this felt off, like the world had glitched. I pressed the gas harder, the engine humming as I picked up speed, turning onto what should have been a main artery leading out toward Somerville. The houses blurred past at first, but the cars didn't. They kept coming, parked in perfect alignment, their windshields reflecting the sunset like empty eyes. By now, sweat was beading on my forehead despite the AC blasting cold air. I cracked the window, letting in the warm evening breeze that carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and distant barbecue smoke. It should have been comforting, normal, but it only amplified the wrongness. These weren't just similar cars, they were identical, down to the factory hubcaps and the faint swirl of a parking lot ding on the driver's side door, the exact spot where I'd sideswiped a shopping cart last month. How could that be? I hadn't even gotten it fixed yet. My mind raced, trying to rationalize it. Mass delusion? Some kind of prank with a fleet of rentals? But who would go to that trouble in the middle of nowhere? The road curved gently and I followed it, expecting the suburbs to give way to farmland or a highway on-ramp. Instead, the landscape stretched on, unchanging. More houses, more driveways, more silver Accords. I must have covered 5 miles by then, maybe 10. But the GPS on my phone kept spinning. No signal, just a blue dot frozen in place. Panic started to creep in, that slow-building dread that makes your chest tight and your thoughts scatter. I slammed on the brakes at a stop sign, tires squealing softly against the asphalt, and idled there staring at the intersection. Straight ahead, more of the same. Left, identical. Right, the road looped back the way I'd come, lined with the same relentless pattern. I couldn't just sit there. With a deep breath, I turned right, figuring if I backtracked fast enough, I could find the construction detour and get the hell out. The engine revved as I pushed it, weaving through the quiet streets. Kids' bikes lay abandoned on sidewalks. No one out playing, no dogs barking, just an unnatural stillness broken only by the rhythmic click of my turn signal. House after house, the cars mocked me from their spots, silent and waiting. My hands gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached, and I started talking to myself, voice low and ragged in the empty car. This isn't real. It can't be. Just keep driving, find a gas station, ask for directions. But there were no gas stations, no corner stores, no corner anything. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in streaks of purple and red, and the streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long shadows that danced across the identical lawns. I tried the radio for distraction, static at first, then a burst of classic rock that warped into a garbled mess before cutting out. My phone was useless, battery draining as it searched for bars that never came. Hours seemed to pass, though my dashboard clock only ticked forward by minutes. Was it the same loop? Had I turned the wrong way? Desperation hit when I spotted a figure on a porch. A man in his 50s maybe, sitting in a lawn chair with a beer in hand. The house behind him had a silver Accord in the driveway, of course. I pulled over abruptly, the car jolting to a stop, and killed the engine. My heart pounded as I stepped out, the door creaking shut behind me. The air felt thicker here, heavy with the scent of damp earth from recent sprinklers. "Hey," I called, my voice steadier than I felt. "Sorry to bother you, but I think I'm lost. Every street looks the same around here." He looked up slowly, his face weathered and unreadable in the porch light's yellow glow. He was dressed in a plain polo shirt and khakis, like he'd just come from a backyard cookout that never happened. After a long pause, he nodded toward the road. "Keep driving. It'll end eventually." "End?" I've been circling for hours. All these cars, they're all the same as mine. Silver Accords. What's going on? Some kind of neighborhood thing? His eyes flicked to my car, then back to me, a faint smile tugging at his lips that didn't reach his eyes. "Yours?" He set the beer down with a soft clink on the armrest. "Funny, they all look the same to me. Just keep driving, friend. You'll get where you're going." I wanted to press him, demand answers, but something in his tone, the flat, rehearsed calm, sent a chill down my spine. It was like talking to an actor reading lines from a script he'd memorized 1,000 times. I muttered a thanks and backed away, sliding into my Accord with shaking hands. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rear view. He was still sitting there, unmoving, watching me go. And in his driveway, another silver Accord, waiting. I floored it then, the speedometer climbing past 60 on the residential streets. Branches whipped at the windows as I barreled through what should have been a parkway, but the trees gave way to more houses, more cars. My mind fractured under the strain, flashes of doubt, paranoia blooming like ink in water. Was I even in New Jersey anymore? Had I crossed some invisible line into a place where reality bent? The psychological weight pressed down, heavier than the endless drive. Every identical vehicle felt like a mirror reflecting my own insignificance, a reminder that I was just another duplicate in this monotonous hell. Hours blurred into what felt like a single, agonizing stretch. Fuel light blinked on, but gas stations never appeared. I rationed my speed, coasting when I could, but the suburbs persisted, unyielding. Dawn broke eventually, pale light filtering through the haze, illuminating yet another row of silver Accords gleaming like they'd been polished overnight. Exhaustion clawed at me, eyelids heavy, but I couldn't stop. Stopping meant accepting it. By midday, delirium set in. I imagined voices in the wind rushing past the windows, whispers urging me to turn around, to join the rows. My reflection in the sun visor looked hollow, eyes bloodshot, stubble darkening my jaw. How long had it been? A day? 2? Time lost meaning in the loop. I tried to focus on small details to stay grounded. The faint hum of the tires on pavement, the way the air conditioner wheezed when I cranked it higher. But even those comforts mocked me, identical to every other car I passed. Finally, as the sun climbed high and beat down mercilessly, I saw a break, or thought I did. The road widened, curving toward what looked like an overpass, a promise of highway beyond. Hope surged, sharp and painful. I gunned the engine, weaving past the last cluster of houses, but as I crested the rise, the overpass revealed itself. Not an escape, but a bridge over the same suburban sprawl, looping back into the grid. More driveways, more silver Accords, stretching into infinity. I pulled over then, not caring about the shoulder crumbling under my tires. The engine ticked as it cooled, and I sat there, forehead against the steering wheel, the weight of it all crashing down. This wasn't a neighborhood. It was a cage, tailored to me, trapping me in the banality of my own life. Every car a version of mine, every house an echo of normalcy. I could drive forever and never leave. And as the first distant streetlight flickered on in the approaching twilight, impossibly soon after noon, I realized the truth. I wasn't trying to escape anymore. Part of me, the exhausted, broken part, almost wanted to park in one of those driveways, to sit on a porch with a beer and wait for the next silver Accord to roll by. Just keep driving, it'll end eventually. But it never would. I've always hated long drives, the way the miles stretch out like they're mocking you, pulling you deeper into your own head. But this one felt necessary, the kind of trip you don't plan but can't avoid. I was heading west from Ohio, aiming for a dusty town in Nevada where my past had unfinished business. The old pickup I borrowed from my brother rattled along I-70, the engine humming steady against the flatlands turning golden under the late afternoon sun. My name's Alex, by the way, 34, divorced, the sort of guy who looks in the mirror and sees too many regrets staring back. The radio had been spitting static for hours, stations fading in and out like ghosts. I fiddled with the dial, but nothing stuck. That's when I remembered the glove compartment. It was stuffed with junk, receipts, a half-empty pack of smokes, and there, wedged in the back, an old cassette tape. No label, just faded plastic with a few scratches. Looked like something from the 70s, The kind my dad used to play on road trips before everything went to hell. Folk music, maybe. I shrugged and popped it into the deck. Why not? Anything to kill the silence. The tape whirred to life with a soft click, and a gentle guitar strummed out, followed by a man's voice, warm and folksy, singing about open roads and wandering souls. It was soothing at first, the melody weaving through the cab like a breeze. The highway calls. The heart replies, he sang, his tone rich, almost nostalgic. I settled back, letting the rhythm match the tires on asphalt. For a while it was just music, tracks about lost loves and dusty trails, the kind of album that made you feel less alone. But around sunset, as the sky bled orange over the prairie, something shifted. The guitar faltered, a brief warble like the tape stretching thin. I glanced at the deck. The eject button sat there, unresponsive. Odd, but I figured it was age. The singer's voice resumed, clearer now, dipping into the next song. "Alex," he said, and my gut twisted. Had I heard that right? No, couldn't be. The lyrics rolled on. "Alex, the road you take leads to the grave you dig tonight." I slammed the steering wheel, heart kicking up. Coincidence. My name's common enough. But the voice lingered in my ears, smooth and insistent, not like a scratch or echo, but deliberate. The music glitched again, a low hum beneath the strings, pulling at the edges of my focus. I reached for the eject button, jamming it hard. Nothing. The tape spun on, locked in place. Night fell fast out here, stars punching through the dark like accusations. I was pushing 70, the headlights carving tunnels through the void. The album's third track started, a ballad about betrayal and hidden sins. The singer's tone turned wistful, lyrics bending around the melody. "You drive to face the man who broke you, Alex, with a knife in your pocket and fire in your eyes." My breath caught. I patted my jacket. No knife, but the weight of what I carried felt heavier now. How could it know? This wasn't some personalized mixtape, it was junk from a borrowed truck. I tried the deck's power button, yanking the key halfway out of the ignition. The engine stuttered but didn't die, and the tape kept playing, the voice weaving my name into every verse like thread through cloth. Sweat beaded on my neck despite the chill seeping through the vents. My trip wasn't innocent. I'd left Cleveland in a haze of anger, heading to that Nevada town to find my father, the bastard who'd abandoned us when I was a kid, leaving Mom to scrape by until she drank herself under. He'd resurfaced last month, a letter in the mail, all apologies and invitations. But I wasn't going for reconciliation. No, I'd packed a pistol in the duffel behind the seat, telling myself it was for protection. Deep down, I knew better. This drive was about settling scores, about ending the rot he'd planted in me. The tape seemed to sense it, the glitches sharpening into whispers between songs. "The gun waits in the shadows, Alex, cold as the promises he never kept." The words twisted the original lyrics, turning a tune about forgotten dreams into a mirror of my rage. I swerved a little, hands slick on the wheel. The highway was empty, no other cars for miles, just me and this cursed thing. I punched the radio, but it looped back to the tape. The folk singer's voice now layered, like an echo from inside my skull. Hours blurred. I stopped at a gas station outside Salina, the neon sign buzzing like a swarm. The clerk, an older guy with a tired nod, rang me up for coffee and a candy bar. "Long night?" he asked, eyeing the truck. "Yeah," I muttered, forcing a smile. "Just passing through." He glanced at the tape deck as I paid. "That old relic still works?" "Mine ate a cassette once. Wouldn't spit it out till I yanked the fuse." I nodded. but inside, panic clawed. Back on the road, the music swelled again, a new track with banjo plucks that felt mocking. "Alex drives through the dark, chasing ghosts that bear his face," the voice sang, the melody lilting, but the words slicing deep. It knew the route. I'd mapped it obsessively, I-70 to I-80, cutting through the salt flats toward Reno, where Dad waited in some rundown trailer. The glitches came faster now, snippets of static that sounded like distant laughter, unraveling the songs into confessions. "You think the bullet will free you, but it chains you tighter, son." I yelled at the deck, "Shut up, eject, damn it!" My fingers clawed at the buttons, but it was fused, the plastic warm under my touch. The truck's dash lights flickered, as if the whole vehicle was in on it. My mind raced. Had my brother rigged this? No, he didn't even know the real reason for the trip. I'd told him it was a job interview, a fresh start. Lies on lies. By midnight, exhaustion gnawed at me, but stopping felt like surrender. The voice grew bolder, addressing me directly between verses. "Why the gun, Alex? For the father who fled, or the boy you buried inside?" The lyrics warped further, the folk tune about wandering minstrels becoming a dirge for my fractured family. Mom's face flashed in my head, pale, broken, the bottles piling up after he left. I'd sworn to make him pay, to force the truth out at gunpoint if needed. But now, with this voice peeling back the layers, doubt crept in. Was I the ghost here, haunting myself? Dawn broke gray over Nebraska, the tape still spinning, relentless. I'd tried everything, prying at the deck with a screwdriver from the toolbox, even pulling over to smash it with a rock. Nothing worked. The mechanism hummed defiantly, the voice adapting to the light. "The sun rises on your reckoning, Alex. The trailer waits, the door unlocked, the past armed and waiting." My stomach churned. How could it describe the address I'd memorized, the faded blue trailer and that godforsaken lot? Psychological fatigue set in, the drive turning inward. Every mile amplified the unease, the music a soundtrack to my unraveling. I gripped the wheel tighter, whispering back at the tape. "You're not real. Just a glitch." But the responses came tailored. "Glitches don't know your secrets, Alex. The affair you hid from your wife. The job you lost to drink. The son you never called back." It wove in fragments of my life. The divorce papers still fresh, the unanswered calls from my own kid, now grown and distant. The dark intention sharpened in my mind. The pistol wasn't just for Dad. It was for erasing the man I'd become. As the Rockies loomed, the tape hit its final track, a haunting acoustic piece that slowed to a crawl. The voice dropped low, intimate. "Pull over, Alex. End the drive before it ends you. The gun's not for him, it's for the mirror." The lyrics dissolved into static, then silence, but the echo lingered. I couldn't eject it still, but something shifted inside me. The anger felt hollow now, exposed under this relentless scrutiny. I found a turnout near the state line, the engine idling as the sun climbed. Hands shaking, I unzipped the duffel and stared at the pistol, its weight a lie I'd carried too long. The tape deck clicked softly, as if waiting. For the first time I saw it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about running. From him. From me. I left the gun on the seat, drove on without it, the music resuming faintly, now just folk songs, untainted. But the voice had planted its seed. Every shadow on the road seemed to whisper my name, and as Nevada's heat shimmered ahead, I wondered if arriving would free me, or if the real trap was the man stepping out of the truck. I remember the fog rolling in like it had a mind of its own. It was late September in rural Nebraska, the kind of flat, endless stretch where the horizon blurs into nothing, and you start questioning why anyone lives out here. I'd been driving back from a job site up near Scottsbluff, hauling tools in my old pickup. The sky had been clear when I left, but by the time I hit the county road, visibility dropped to maybe 20 feet. Headlights cut thin beams through the white, and the world shrank to the ribbon of asphalt unspooling ahead. I wasn't speeding. Hell, I was crawling at 40, white-knuckling the wheel, cursing under my breath every time the wipers slapped uselessly against the mist clinging to the windshield. The radio had fizzled out an hour back, static swallowing the country station I'd been half listening to. Silence pressed in, broken only by the low hum of the engine and the occasional rattle of loose gravel under the tires. It felt isolating, like the fog was swallowing me whole. Then it happened. A thud, solid and heavy, right against the front bumper. The truck lurched, tires skidding a bit on the slick road before I slammed the brakes. My heart hammered in my chest, a sharp spike of adrenaline that made my vision tunnel. I sat there for a second, engine idling, staring into the fog. What the hell was that? I muttered to myself, voice sounding too loud in the cab. I'd felt the impact. Soft, yielding, like hitting a deer or maybe a dog. Rural roads like this, you learn to expect that kind of thing. But there was no cry, no thrashing in the underbrush. Just quiet. I killed the headlights for a moment, not wanting to blind myself further, then flicked them back on. Nothing. No shape crumpled on the road, no eyes reflecting back from the ditch. I eased the truck forward a few feet, scanning left and right. The fog muffled everything, turning the fields into vague shadows. Come on, man, don't be stupid, I told myself, gripping the door handle. But something held me back, a prickling at the base of my neck, like I wasn't alone. I waited, listening to the tick of the cooling engine, the distant drip of condensation somewhere outside. After a minute, I popped the door and stepped out, boots crunching on wet gravel. The air was thick, cold, and damp, seeping into my jacket. I rounded the front of the truck, shining my phone's flashlight low. There, on the bumper, a dark smear, about the size of my hand, glistening wetly. It looked like blood mixed with oil, dark and viscous, but thicker, almost tar-like. No fur, no bone fragments. Just that. I knelt closer, the smell hitting me then. Earthy, metallic, with an undercurrent of something rotten, like wet soil turned over too long. Jesus, I whispered, reaching out with a rag from my pocket to wipe it off. It didn't budge. The rag smeared it around, but the stuff stuck fast, absorbing into the paint almost. I scrubbed harder, the friction warming my hand, but it was like trying to clean mud from Velcro. Frustrated, I straightened up, glancing around the empty road. No sign of whatever I'd hit. Maybe it bounced off into the field, stunned but alive. I wasn't about to go tromping through the fog-chasing shadows. Back in the cab, I slammed the door, shook my head, and got moving again. The smear would have to wait until I found a gas station. The next few miles dragged. The fog didn't lift. If anything, it thickened, pressing against the windows like a living thing. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind wandered back to that impact. What if it was a person? Hitchhiker, drunk, stumbling out of nowhere? Guilt gnawed at me, mixing with the unease. I'd called the sheriff when I got signal. There was a tower up ahead, maybe, but the smear bothered me more than it should. In the rear view, I could see it, a dark patch against the chrome bumper, unmoving. Then I noticed it shifting, subtle at first, like a trick of the headlights. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. No, there it was. Tendrils of the stuff creeping along the edge of the bumper, slow as molasses, spreading toward the grill. What the? I leaned forward, squinting. It wasn't dripping or running, it was crawling, inching across the metal with a deliberate creep. By the time I'd driven another mile, it had covered half the front, eating into the faded blue paint. Flecks of color flaked off, dissolving into the substance, leaving bare metal exposed and pitting. Panic bubbled up, hot in my throat. I hit the wipers again, even though they were meant for the windshield, hoping the motion would dislodge it. Nothing. The blades just hummed uselessly over the glass. I tried the washers, spraying fluid in a desperate arc, but the liquid beaded up and slid away, the dark mass untouched. "This isn't right," I said aloud, my voice cracking. My hands shook on the wheel as I pushed the truck harder, needle climbing to 50, then 60. Fog be damned. Maybe speed would shake it loose or the wind shear. It didn't. Over the next 10 minutes, the spread accelerated. I could hear it now, a soft, insistent fizzing, like acid on tinfoil, faint but growing. The bumper was half gone, metal bubbling and thinning where the substance touched. It climbed the hood, veins of black threading toward the windshield. The paint dissolved in patches, exposing raw steel that rusted almost instantly, flaking away. My breath came short, shallow. This wasn't some spill. It was alive, or something close to it, devouring my truck mile by mile. I fumbled for my phone. No bars. The fog seemed to block everything, a deliberate shroud. "Think, damn it," I growled, forcing calm. Pull over? Inspect up close? But getting out meant facing whatever this was in the open, and the road felt too exposed, too watched. The fields on either side rustled faintly, or maybe that was my imagination. Instead, I kept driving, eyes darting between the road and the encroaching darkness. It reached the hood's edge now, curling over like fingers testing the seal. The fizzing grew louder, vibrating through the frame into my seat. By the time the substance licked the base of the windshield, I was sweating despite the chill. Cracks spiderwebbed the glass from the inside out. No, wait, from the pressure of the dissolving frame. The wipers dragged slower, their mounts corroding. I could smell it stronger now, that rotten earth scent filling the cab through the vents. It was in the air, seeping. My mind raced. Chemical spill? Some freak industrial waste dumped in the fields? But it didn't act like any chemical I'd ever seen. It moved with purpose, silent and patient, as if deciding when to breach. The truck shuddered, engine coughing as the corrosion hit the undercarriage. I swerved onto the shoulder, gravel spraying, and killed the ignition. Silence crashed in, broken only by that relentless fizzing. The dark mass pulsed faintly on the hood, inches from the cabin glass. I sat frozen, staring at it, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. What had I hit? Not an animal, not a person. Something else pulled from the fog like a trap. I grabbed my jacket, the rag, a flashlight, anything, and eased the door open. The cold hit me, carrying that smell, thicker out here. The substance had spread to the fenders, wheels sinking slightly into softening tires. Up close, it wasn't just black, it shifted. Oily rainbows in the beam, alive with tiny movements. I jabbed the rag at it again, but my hand came away slick, skin tingling where it brushed. Burning. Not bad, but warning. Backing away, I circled the truck, the fog closing in behind me. No other cars, no lights. Just me and this thing eating my escape. Desperation clawed at me. I couldn't stay. It would consume the whole rig, and me with it. Run? To where? The nearest town was 20 miles back, swallowed by mist. I climbed in, locked the doors and turned the key. The engine wheezed to life, but the dash sparked, corrosion hitting electrics. I floored it, back onto the road, the truck groaning like a wounded animal. The substance surged in response, cracking the windshield fully now, a web of fractures blooming. Faint hisses seeped through, air tasting wrong. Miles blurred, 5, 10, the fog unyielding. My thoughts fragmented, memories of the thud, the emptiness after, how the impact had felt too soft, too giving, like hitting fog made flesh. Paranoia set in. Was it following me, or had I brought it? The cab grew warmer, metal frame softening, door handles sticking. It reached the seals, seeping in thin lines, pooling on the floor mats. I kicked at it, but it absorbed the boot tread, leaving my soul tacky. Then the engine died. Final, sputtering death. The truck coasted to a stop in the middle of nowhere, headlights flickering out. Darkness swallowed us. The fizzing was everywhere now, close, intimate. I pressed against the seat, breath fogging the cracking glass. Through the haze, shapes moved in the fog, tall, indistinct, waiting. The substance crept across the dash toward me. I whispered a prayer I hadn't said since childhood, fingers on the door, ready to run into whatever waited outside. But as the first tendril touched the lock, something shifted. The fog thinned, just a hair, and distant taillights pierced it. A car, approaching slow. Help? Or more of the same? I didn't know. I just sat there, trapped in the dissolving heart of my own mistake, wondering if I'd ever see clear skies again. The fizzing laughed softly in the silence, and I realized the real horror wasn't the thing on my bumper. It was knowing it had chosen me. I've been driving through Oklahoma for what feels like days, the kind of endless stretch where the highway blurs into a black ribbon under my tires, and the only company is the low hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of static from the radio. It was well past midnight when my eyes started burning, the weight of fatigue pressing down like a hand on my shoulder. I needed to stop, just for a minute, to shake off the drowsiness before I ended up wrapped around a guardrail. Up ahead, a sign flickered in my headlights, rest area 1 mile. I took the exit, the gravel crunching under the wheels as I pulled into the lot. The place looked deserted, like it had been forgotten by time. The main building, a squat concrete thing that probably housed bathrooms and vending machines once, sat dark and silent, its windows boarded up with plywood that looked weathered and peeling. A few sodium lamps dotted the perimeter, but they were dead, leaving everything swallowed in shadow. My headlights swept across an empty picnic table and a couple of rusted trash cans tipped on their sides, spilling out memories of old fast food wrappers that the wind hadn't bothered to carry away. No other cars, no signs of life. Just the vast, empty parking lot stretching out toward the scrubland beyond. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, listening to the tick of the cooling motor and the faint rustle of wind through the tall grass. The air outside smelled like dry earth and something faintly metallic, maybe ozone from an approaching storm. I locked the doors out of habit, old paranoia from too many late-night drives, and stepped out, stretching my arms until my back popped. A short walk, I told myself, just to get the blood moving, clear my head. The pavement was cracked and uneven under my shoes, weeds pushing up through the fissures like they owned the place now. I wandered toward the building, my footsteps echoing too loudly in the quiet. Up close, the boards over the windows were tagged with faded graffiti, words I couldn't make out in the dark. The wind picked up, carrying a distant howl that might have been coyotes, or just the empty spaces between hills. I circled the picnic area, kicking at a soda can that skittered away into the bushes. It felt good to move, but unease started creeping in. The kind that makes your skin prickle without reason. This place had been abandoned for years, I figured. No point lingering. 10 minutes, maybe 15, and I was back at my car. I fished the keys from my pocket, thumbed the unlock button. The doors popped with that familiar chirp, and I slid into the driver's seat, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. But something was off. On the dashboard, right in the center where I'd left nothing but a crumpled receipt from my last gas stop, there was a map, folded neatly, precisely, like it had been gift-wrapped. Not just any map, a road atlas, the kind you don't see much anymore with that glossy paper and faded colors. I hadn't put it there. The car had been locked. I'd double-checked. My heart thudded once, hard, as I picked it up. The edges were crisp, no creases from being stuffed in a glove box. I unfolded it slowly, the paper whispering against my fingers. It was centered on Oklahoma, the highways spider-webbing out from Tulsa and Oklahoma City. And there, traced in thick black marker, was a route starting right at this rest stop. It looped south and west, through back roads I'd never heard of, ending at a spot marked with a heavy X. Eldridge. The name tugged at something in my memory. A ghost town, wiped out in a fire back in the 70s or 80s. I'd read about it once, scrolling through some true crime forum late at night. Arson, they said, or maybe a gas explosion. Whole place burned to the ground, and what was left was off limits, swallowed by state land. I stared at the map, my mind racing. Who the hell left this? No one around? No tire tracks in the dust except mine. I glanced in the rear view, nothing but empty lot and shadows. The wind was louder now, rattling the branches of a scraggly tree nearby. Part of me wanted to toss it out the window and drive away, chalk it up to exhaustion playing tricks. But curiosity gnawed at me, that stupid human itch to understand. What if it was a warning or a shortcut? Eldridge was a dead end in more ways than one, but the route looked deliberate, like someone knew I was here. I folded the map and tucked it into the console, started the engine. The headlights cut through the dark again, and I pulled out, merging back onto the highway. But I couldn't shake it. Every mile, I glanced at the console, the weight of the thing pulling at my thoughts. The radio spat static, no stations this far out, just me and the road, unraveling like the marker lines on that paper. By the time I hit the first turnoff, the map indicated some unmarked county road snaking into the hills. The sky was lightening to that bruised purple of pre-dawn. I told myself I'd just follow it a bit, see where it led, then double back if it got weird. The pavement narrowed, potholes jolting the car, and the landscape shifted to rolling scrub dotted with oil pumps nodding like ancient birds. No signs of civilization, just fences sagging under their own rust and the occasional crow taking flight from a fence post. Hours passed that way, the sun creeping up behind me, turning the air thick with heat even through the cracked window. I stopped once for coffee at a dingy station that barely qualified as a town, but the map stayed with me, its route burning in my mind. The cashier, an old guy with sun-leathered skin, eyed me when I asked about Eldridge. "That place? Ain't nothing there but ghosts and bad luck," he muttered, sliding my change across the counter without meeting my eyes. "Fire took it all. Folks say the ground's still cursed. You heading that way?" I lied, said no, just passing through, but his words stuck, fueling the doubt that had been simmering. Why this route? Why me? By afternoon, the road devolved into dirt, the car bouncing over ruts that kicked up clouds of red dust. The map's lines matched perfectly. No detours, no mistakes. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, sweat beading on my forehead despite the AC blasting. I kept replaying the rest stop in my head. The empty lot, the locked doors. How did it get in the car? The sun was dipping low when I crested a final hill, and there it was. Eldridge, or what was left of it, a valley scarred black, dotted with the skeletons of buildings. Charred timbers jutted from the earth like broken ribs, foundations crumbling into weeds. No smoke lingered. This was old death, baked into the soil. I parked at the edge, the engine's rumble dying into silence, broken only by the wind sighing through the ruins. Stepping out, the air hit me, acrid, like charred wood that never quite aired out, mixed with the dry rot of abandonment. I followed a faint path, the map clutched in my hand, its folds now creased from my grip. The town square, maybe, was a circle of melted stone where a fountain had been. I could picture it. Families picnicking, kids laughing before the flames came. The psychological weight settled in, heavy and cold. The isolation of it all, the way the hills cupped the valley like a grave. No birds sang here. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. Deeper in, I found the marker's endpoint, a rusted signpost half buried in ash, ELDRIDGE spelled out in warped metal, and there, pinned under a rock, another map. Identical, but the route traced back, the way I'd come, looping endlessly. My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen anyone, hadn't heard a soul, but this was deliberate. A game, a trap. The wind picked up, carrying a whisper that wasn't quite words, more like the echo of crackling fire. I backed away, heart hammering, scanning the empty streets. Shadows lengthened as the sun sank, turning the ruins into teeth. I ran to the car, tires spinning dust as I fled the valley, the maps both burning holes in my pocket. That night, holed up in a motel 2 counties away, I burned them in the sink, watching the marker ink bubble and blacken. But even then, in the dark room with the AC humming, I swore I heard that wind again, tracing lines on the window glass. Eldridge wasn't gone. It was waiting, and now it knew the way back to me.